Hello, welcome to Foundations for Life. This is Barry Phillips, and my esteemed co-host Mike Clayton is on the road this week. In his absence, I have tried to find the next esteemed person in line, and that just so happens to be my sister LeAnne. So we are visiting family in Grassy Creek in Virginia, and LeAnne lives very close by Fork Mountain, I think it is. It felt like a mountain, the up and down climb of getting in here. And this mom used to say they must have followed a snake up through here and just built the road right behind us where the snake crawled. So we are delighted you can join us. And tonight we have a few thoughts pertaining to what it means to lead in various congregational levels, or not really levels, settings would be the better word. So we'll have LeAnne. LeAnne, I want you to, if you will, to begin tonight to share a little bit about how you and Larry got started, Larry, her husband, and describe the group that you have that meets here in this house that we're in tonight. And then we'd like to talk about various aspects of what it means to lead a smaller living room style setting of a congregation. So how in the world did you get here?
So I was raised in the Church of God, just like you were, and wanted to be involved in ministry, pretty much all my life. I started out teaching Sunday school when I was about 12, 13 years old. I teach the nursery class and worked my way up until when I was working at a full-time job and our facility was closing, I felt that was time for me to go into ministry.
Okay.
So that was, I was trying to think of the actual dates, somewhere around 1999. And so I was getting into full-time ministry. And of course, then it wasn't, a year or two later that you had been in full-time ministry for a while. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of come into Hebrew Roots.
Shot holes in the bottom of the boat, and made waves, and stunk up the joint.
A little bit of all of that. So about the time that I'm getting my feet wet, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm on my journey here. I'm going to be working at these big churches, and I'm going to be traveling and speaking and all those things. And then you come along and like,
boom.
What? It's all wrong, everything we've ever thought and been taught, we got to go back and think about it again. So I was really, really hesitant about a lot of the things that you were saying. And I know you came in one Thanksgiving and talked to all of us, but I don't know if I just mentally blocked that day out or what, but I really don't remember a lot about that day.
I do.
Yeah, I know you do. I've heard you tell the story. But
I remember.
But I really kind of blocked that out, I think. What I remember is just me coming back, getting my Bible, and for the next, maybe year and a half, I would get my scriptures all lined up, and I would get my nerve up, and then I would call you, and I would say, okay, Barry, what about this? Okay, this is what the scripture says. What about this? And you would come back and you'd say, all you would say was, oh, really? That was your favorite line. Oh, really? And I was like, yeah, really, that's what it says. And then you would say, well, have you thought about this scripture right here? And you would bring out another scripture, and I would get mad and say, okay, I got to go. And so then, we would hang up. But the thing was, where some other people, might just draw back and be afraid to ask questions, I have never been afraid to ask a question. I just when I was in ministry training, when I was working for ministers, when I was dealing with church things, I always was that one person that, and for lack of a better term, would be the devil's advocate and say, okay, but have you thought about this? So it was really kind of right up my alley what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little knowing in my spirit that this is right. You're going to fight against it for a while, but this is right. And so Larry and I got into studying Hebraically, more so me at first than Larry, because Larry was really pretty satisfied with the church environment that we were in. He had a lot of friends, had a lot of activities going on, and he was pretty satisfied with that. But along the way, about the time when you were introducing me to Hebrew roots and studying the Bible Hebraically, I had a couple of friends that I had ministered to and ministered with at the church that I was at first in full-time ministry, and they had been to a Sid Roth convention.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that.
Yes, with one of the ladies who's in my Bible study now. So she had introduced them to that, and they had went there and seen all the banners flying and heard the different terms being used, Yeshua and Yahweh and all those things, and they had gotten really interested in that. So they were having a Bible study at their home. Their names were Jack and Judy, and both of them have since have gone on to be with Yeshua until the time comes for his kingdom to come back. And so that's how I kind of got started in a home group, because they were having a home group. They were going to church on Sundays, but then they would have a home group on Saturdays.
So they were double dipping.
Yeah. And everybody there was double dipping, because I was still a minister at another church. I had moved to another church. I was still a minister at another church, and then going there on Saturdays. And then they asked me, because I was a minister, they asked me to start helping do some of the studies at their house. Mm-hmm. And then before you know it, we would meet at our house one week and then at their house the next week, and started going back and forth.
I'd forgotten about that.
Until it actually evolved into everybody just coming here. So that's how kind of we got started.
I was thinking that while I was driving in, coming here tonight, Acts chapter 3 describes how that 3,000 people, or about 3,000 people, were added to the overall number of early believers in Messiah Yeshua. But it doesn't actually say that they all met in one location on a regular basis. So for them to meet and discuss Yeshua meant going to the temple area in one of the courtyards. And then it also describes how that they went from house to house, breaking bread and fellowshipping and sharing the news of Yeshua and edifying one another. It also talks about how that these people walked in extreme anointing and power, healing the sick and raising the dead and casting out demons, etc. And with great power, they gave witness to who Yeshua is. But again, we're not talking about large numbers of people under one roof.
And do you think that they were welcome in the temple still? At
that time, I think that there was a great curiosity. There were those that dared not to offend them because they saw the power that was there. Mm-hmm. Persecution arose, and it pushed people to a place of, do I want what they have, or do I want the acceptance of the local synagogues and religious sect leadership? I'm thinking that of how that Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul, went into the synagogues as his custom was, as Yeshua's custom was. And it would seem for some number of years he debated with people in the synagogue. So in the synagogues, there is a potential large crowd.
Mm-hmm.
But there came a point where he said, from now on, I'm just going to take this message to the Goyim. And we began to read how that there was a group that met in the house of, say, Lydia, or one Aquila and Priscilla, or they were meeting in various homes, and he would write letters to the various home groups in Corinth or in Ephesus or some other location.
But you always, I always get this picture when you was talking about meeting in the home of Lydia. I guess I always had this picture of her having maybe this big courtyard or this big room, and it being all overflowing all the time with people and that kind of thing. But possibly not. I mean, a lot of these groups could have been small and not to overflowing.
You've got a large living room here. I mean, it's not enormous, but it's large. But if you were to put 50 people in that living room,
I don't know that we can fit 50 people.
They would be standing looking in the front door. They would be here in the kitchen, peeking around the corner. Mm-hmm. They would be standing room only. There would be no sitting. They would be standing room only.
Well, I think a couple of times you've come and spoke for us. We've had maybe 25.
25-ish.
Yeah.
So a home group, unless a home, as you're describing, was that one that was wealthy or something, the crowds probably in that model were smaller. The idea that we have of the American church model of seeing how many people you can crowd under one roof, mm-hmm. the more you have, especially multi-thousand member churches, it seems like this is the epitome of the power of the Father. This is where the glory must be. This must be the epicenter of the witness of Yeshua.
Because you got so many people attracted to that area.
Obviously, something is right here, but it could be the lights, the music, the personality, mm-hmm. or the fact that it's the most biggest, baddest, most awesomest thing going on in town, mm-hmm. and you want to be a part of what is successful. If someone says, well, where do you go to church? Well, I go to, and you name the big, well-known event center. Mm-hmm. I'm not throwing off and saying that can't be legitimate or have something to offer. But for those who say, I want to get back to the book of Acts model, the early church, the early assemblies, then you're probably going to have what most Hebrew roots congregations have, a smaller group.
Right.
There are, in my opinion, there are some unknown, unheralded leadership heroes who meet as a couple. Mm-hmm. A husband-wife team studying together on their sofa or around their kitchen table. And mom and dad and their children meeting by themselves, not because they're isolationists, but because there's no one else around. They don't know anyone. I know of a couple in Australia, and they have no one else. And when they correspond with me, I'm overwhelmed at the level of their insight that they're gaining just by studying together.
But the thing is, it's not, when you talk about being an isolationist and not having anywhere to go, there are options. I mean, you do have places that you can go. You could choose to go to the local church. You could like find something that is, the closest that you could get to. But every time that I've gotten discouraged and I've thought, well, for the sake of my daughter or for the sake of Larry having more fellowship, or, maybe you have a couple of really bad weekends in a row, and this one's got to work and this one's sick or this one's out of town, and you get discouraged. And I would think, okay, Yahweh, maybe I'm just wasting my time. I mean, you have to be honest. Sometimes that's the way you feel when you have a small group. And it's mostly just because of circumstances. It's not because the people have turned their back on you or anything like that. It's just circumstances. But then,
so let's pause there just for a second. So if you're leading a congregation that has 75, 100, few hundred people, you get a phone call Shabbat morning, we're not coming because a child's sick, somebody had to work that couldn't get out of work, car broke down, etc. Or we're just going to sleep today. That doesn't normally rock everything and throw everything out of kilter. But when you have
10 people,
10 people, 3 or 4 or 5 couples coming and sitting with you in your living room, 1 or 2 of those calls, and it's like, do we even bother to have people? I mean, you got one lady, how far is she traveling from the resort area here? And I mean, that's what, 45, 50 minutes?
We got one person that travels 45 minutes from the north. We've got another couple that travels 45 minutes from, like, south of us. We've got another gentleman that travels 45 minutes from the east of us. So,
send them from the north, send them from the south, the east, and the west.
He did, but he's only sent 1 or 2 from each direction. So, I mean, it's not large. But, and then every once in a while you have a straggler or a guest come in. And it's just like when I get to the point, I'm just done. I'm just going to go do something else. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to just pack it in. Then a new couple shows up or a new person, shows up and is like, wow, this is great. The study's great. I love the fellowship. I love this. So you get encouraged again. And then, like I say, circumstances happen. And then, well, we can't come next week. We come this week, but we can't come next week. And then COVID hit. And that really, kind of was a setback too, because, people are a little nervous about coming out. And so I wrote down a few little like advantages, disadvantages, because, if we're talking to...
This week we're cheating. We normally, Mike and I don't have any notes. It's totally spontaneous, but LeAnne
is a note taker.
So
a list maker too.
We're going to let her cheat about that much. I'm going to think of a monkey wrench to throw at her here in just a minute. Go ahead.
So the advantages are pretty much that, like for us, we don't have to travel. I mean, it's not like we have to get in the car and go anywhere.
Okay.
We're here. And so if we're going to have study, we're here, and people can come in and know that we're going to be here. It also, because it is in our home, people feel comfortable. And we had a couple of guests come in the other week, and they noticed somebody else just kind of like walked in the front door. And they looked at me and it was like, they didn't knock. I was like, no, they didn't. They know it's Shabbat. And so then it wasn't like 2 or 3 minutes later, here comes somebody else. Nobody knocks. Nobody rings the doorbell or nothing. They just come in, So it's kind of like family. And so they're all, so these people, they're standing there, they're just amazed. They're like, wow, everybody just comes on in. And I'm like, yeah, that's the way Shabbat is. And we put out a pretty big spread of snacks and fruit, and sometimes the regulars, they'll bring stuff in, or sometimes they'll like give us a little bit of money or something to supplement buying stuff. But we usually have pretty good food for people to come in. So it does feel more like family, and it's a more intimate setting. And one of the other advantages is when it's a home group and you're really small and you're dependent on people to be able to get here, you can be a little more flexible. So there are times where, let's just say, like we have to go out of town for our daughter. If she's got an event or something other, and we're out of town maybe Friday and Saturday, I can call everybody up that week and say, hey, is it okay if we meet Sunday afternoon?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't throw that big of a wrench in the whole works.
Okay.
You know? So those are kind of some of the advantages. What you think?
Well, I know at House of David, and House of David is not huge. We're on a great big day, over 50. Last week, I think we had 13. We had people sick, had people out of town, and we've got people who travel 2 hours one way, an hour and a half one way. Mm-hmm. And again, it's from all different directions.
And you say y'all have 13. I'm like, wow, that'd be okay.
So, for me, on those days, I need to stay as focused, and to me, I need to be as sharp and as prepared as if the room is full. And we've never really grown beyond 50, 60 at the most because of lack of space in our building. We need a bigger facility in order to get any bigger. Mm-hmm. We have parking issues, bathroom issues, limited seating issues, etc. So to maintain that, I need to be as consistent as possible. So we start the same time every week. We try to keep the same pattern as much as we can because people who are traveling in need to anticipate when they should arrive and so on. So for me to call everybody up and say, we're changing from, Shabbat afternoon to Shabbat morning because, we got a change of plans. If you're traveling 2 hours one way, that don't work. Mm-hmm. And so I'm on the opposite end of that. I don't have this flexibility. And the small intimacy is there to some degree. We have a strong family feel, but still there's too many people to allow just an open-ended conversation without some sense of structure of, if you don't raise your hand, we're going to be talking over top of one another here if we're doing the Midrash style. So, what you're offering is different, and it does have its advantages. What about on the negative side of things?
Well, one other advantage I'm going to point out, too, is since it is a small group, even people like my husband, Larry, he is the biggest cut up in the world, and draws attention to himself a lot of times.
He's hilarious.
In hilarious ways. But as far as being serious and speaking up or asking a question or something, even though we know your whole congregation pretty much and we've been there a lot and feel like we're kind of part of the House of David family as well, he would never ask a question. He would never make a comment, because even that much larger of a group. But here, I've noticed, over the years, he just keeps opening up more and more. And when he comes out with something, it really is a nugget of wisdom, mm-hmm. Something that really contributes to the conversation. So that's another good point, that even if you have people that don't normally open up, once they get used to your small setting, they do feel like they can ask a question and not feel embarrassed.
Right.
So the negative side, we've talked about a couple of them with the limited number of people, and if somebody's out, it really affects your ministry that day. Another thing is, since it isn't our home, if we go on vacation, like we were on vacation this past weekend, we don't have study at all. So there's nothing there for the ones who would normally come. So
then you got to pick up back and start trying to find some momentum again from a week off.
Well, momentum, or then you have to figure out, do I want to try to double up and do two Torah portions in 1 week to try to catch everybody up? Do I just go with the week that's there and skip the one that was before? You know, it's a little bit of a challenge. And then if something happens, like where we were out last week, and then this weekend, let's say something happened that, one or two of them were sick, then you wind up, sometimes there's been like 2 weeks in a row that there wasn't study, for just various reasons. So then you really lose momentum. That's a disadvantage with not having a lot of people. And another thing to go along with that, and, your viewers, if they've got ideas or anything, they can write in or call in.
We're always looking for help.
But you can't advertise to the public. When I worked at a church that had 500 to 600 people every weekend, I was in charge of communications. So I know how to put communications out there. I know how to advertise. I know how to hold events that would draw people in. But this is our home. I can't just put an ad in a paper and say, come worship with us, because of the size and because you don't know what people are going to come. And I mean, maybe that's a lack of faith or anything, but Larry has kind of drawn the line there. It's like, okay, we're not opening up the house to
just anyone,
just putting it out there for people. So to try to grow, then you have to depend on like your folks or us talking to people and inviting people. And there again, since I'm the minister or the teacher, not just the minister, everybody ministers in certain ways, but I'm basically the teacher, to think about like trying to invite people who are over me at work or something, it's always kind of a sticky situation, to try, because then you wind up being somebody's pastor that like maybe is your boss or something. And so that's a little bit different situation too. And like what you were saying, the advantages of like having a bigger congregation, about, this having the best music program or the best kids program or something like that. I don't play an instrument. So you're really limited on music unless you just play a video or something and join in and sing with that, which we do at times. So when we were getting ready for this, Larry's like, when you start thinking about it, it's a lot more disadvantages than it is advantages. But at this point in time, we just have to be obedient. I mean, and the Father has not led us to a bigger congregation. We tried going to a couple of different places that were like an hour away from us.
Yeah,
that didn't fit, exactly for us, and didn't work out too well. And you're 4 hours away, so we can't do that. And, every weekend. So
a small group that's struggling, let's just put it that way. They feel we're not successful because we don't have a larger number. They're dealing with the issues of inviting people into a home. Sometimes people take advantage, and even if you invite people in, they may not be knocking or ringing the doorbell, but this is still your house. And so, some small groups, I know they have a lot of kids, and the kids are running all over the place, It's one thing if they can hang out on the front porch or play in the front yard, or you got a bedroom somewhere where someone can teach at that level. But your house is wrecked when everybody leaves. That can happen. People say this has been great to walk off and no one helps clean up and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a leader or some leaders of a small group and they're discouraged. And they keep asking themselves Saturday nights, why are we doing this? Only one showed up today, or everybody showed up and now we're going to take all day tomorrow to clean up this house. What do you say to them? Why do we do this? Why do LeAnne and Larry Bray open up their home and you've gone through all of the stuff and the people turnovers and the issues that arise? Why do you do this? And what would you say that would encourage others that do this? If you have a word of encouragement.
I do. I mean, it is encouraging. Just last week, there are unexpected blessings, there are unexpected joys, unexpected, like say, people that wind up coming in and developing relationships with people. Realizing that, we had a couple to come in here recently, and they actually attend a Seventh-day Adventist church. And so they have the basic knowledge of feast days that they've researched on their own, but they have a basic knowledge of Shabbat, and they are precious people. Just precious people. And just such a hunger and a thirst for more. Mm-hmm. That's what we've always talked about is if you're sitting on a pew and you're thinking, is this all there is?
Yes.
And they're just thirsty and hungry for more. One of the people that come was at one time my boss. And I went to work the week that I started working for him. I sent him my request for days off for that year. And he met me out like in front of one of the hallways, and he was like, "Are you Jewish?" And I was like, "Why you ask?" And he said, "Well, I noticed you've asked off for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Passover." He's like, "Are you Jewish?" And so it started a conversation. Yeah. And now he has just dug, and his name is Doug, but he has just gotten into the Word and just has grown by leaps and bounds over the last year or so, and just witness to other people, and so and then there are couple in our group that is just so close to us and just loves Kaylin, our daughter, like she's their own, and all of them do. They love her like that. She hasn't.
So it's family.
She hasn't had a lot of friends. It hasn't been young people here, but these people would go to the ends of the earth for her, and so just develop a relationship with the people that you have. And you can't worry about the people that you don't have. So just let Yahweh use you to grow these people, mm-hmm. to encourage them, because, and I always think, if I wasn't here, if Larry and I were not here and not opening up our home, where would these people go?
Yeah.
So you just have to go with what you got until he gives you more. And if it's just you by yourselves, you just go with you. And until he opens up a door to maybe someone else open up a congregation, you join with them. Or, like the weeks that we haven't had study. A lot of times I'll listen to House of David, when you're doing your teaching, or I'll tell my folks, we're not having study, but listen to Barry's teaching this week. So, and there's going to come a point in time in the future, we all know it's coming, where you're not going to be able to meet in great big church settings.
Possibly so.
And we're a leg up on everybody.
Remember, many, many years ago, in closing today, one of our first Sukkots, 2 or 3 years in, a lady just happened to mention that she looked forward to Sukkot because this was the only time of year that she actually had to have fellowship with people who believed anywhere close to what they were believing and practicing, because she and her husband studied every Shabbat by themselves, and they had no one else anywhere around to fellowship with. And I remember being completely humbled and broken down at their sacrifice. And from that time on, I have sought to honor those who meet 1 and 2. So on that day, when Messiah is handing out crowns and welcoming us into the kingdom, I honestly believe that there are many of you who meet in a very small group, maybe as a couple, maybe even as an individual. You will be in line ahead of us. And that day, I think you will have a greater honor than those that had a company to stand with and be faithful. So I want to join with LeAnne and encourage you. Mm-hmm. And if you have ideas, if you have questions, you have things you want to share, please reach out. And you can do so at this Remnant of Israel channel. I would love to hear from you. And if in any way we can, to help you. So, LeAnne, thank you for your time. Thank you for your sharing your story. And thank you for yours. Thank you for joining us for Foundations of Life. We look forward to seeing you again next week. And until then, shalom.
Bye, y'all.